So today we are going to be looking at scope management, project scope management. We're going to be looking at project scope management. Can you guys see my screen? So, of course, you know how it is being done, okay? I want everyone to keep the energy as high as we did last week. I said you guys were the best set for this year, okay? I know why I'm saying that. I like the interactions, I like the energy. Okay, so let's keep it up today in class as well. And if you are having anything to distract you, you just want to be here so that others can also learn. And this is a learning environment from your experience, from your contribution and the rest. So again, project managers, what do you understand by project scope management? What is scope management?
Scope management is the work.
I think you are joining with two devices. You might want to put one off
The work,
because it's echoing, or just mute one so you can hear you very well in one.
the work to be done.
It's same thing, we can't hear you. Or is it me? Can you
No,
guys hear him?
it's me.
Okay, try again.
Work.
It's still echoing. You want to log off with one device, or you mute one completely, just mute it completely.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better, sir.
Okay, it is the work to be done
Okay.
with clearly defined boundaries
Wow.
of exclusions and inclusions.
Thank you very much, sir. He said it's a work to be done with very clear boundaries, work boundaries. Okay, so when we are looking at project scope management, we are basically looking at how we want to manage the work, okay, to be done in the project, the extent of work, how to manage the extent of work to be done in the project, how to manage the deliverables or the features or the work items that is expected to be executed in the project. And of course, we'll have to be the one to collectively identify, okay, analyze, collect, and define those work. Okay, and we end up having what we call the scope baseline. So that is what we mean by scope management, how to be able to manage the extent of work that is needed to be done in the project. Okay, so that's what it means. And at this phase, we also have different knowledge areas. Okay, so we have different knowledge areas. Not just one. This we have about 6. Remember, in integration, out of the 49 processes, we saw 7 processes in integration. Now, in the scope management, we are going to be looking at 6 processes out of the 49 process, please. And the first one is how we are going to manage scope. As a team in the project, as a project manager, you are going to come up with a guideline, a document that will intentionally help you and your team to manage the extent of work to be done, to be able to manage the area of coverage, to be able to manage the boundaries, the what is included and what is not included in the project, being able to state the total work that has to be done in the project. How are you guys going to collect requirements? How are you guys going to define those scope? How are you going to select those requirements? How are you going to create your work breakdown structure? How are you going to verify those work breakdown structure? How are you going to validate that scope? How are you going to control the scope? So these are all the things that we do in the in these processes. The first one is to create a plan. A plan, like I said, is usually a document, and you see it all through the other knowledge areas. In the traditional project management, we are plan-centric. We are process-centric. The key performance indicator is our ability to be able to conform to the plan. So when we come up with this plan, it means that if we're going to take any decision in the project, or if we're in doubt or we need any clarification, we would have prepared a document that will guide us on the tools, the method, the techniques, everything that we are going to use in the project. How we're going to take the decision is done in the scope management plan. And we also look at the collect requirement. At the collect requirement, we are looking at how we are going to elicit or collect requirements, features that is needed for us to be able to create the deliverables, okay? We are going to look at how we are going to elicit it for different things that we are going to be needing for the project. Whether we are going to be looking at getting those information from our stakeholders, or we're going to be doing a form of market study, visibility study, whether we are going to be doing like survey, questionnaires and surveys, right? Anyhow, we are going to make sure we collect the necessary requirement that will enable us to create the project deliverables, is what we do in collecting requirements, okay? And of course, it always come up with a list. The output of this is a requirements plan, okay? So we also look at, after we have collected all the requirements, how do we now sort those requirements, okay? How do we sort, because when you are collecting requirements, at a point, it could be that you are bringing in, things that are, most of the things that you are bringing in could be based on assumption, right? And at a point, you'll be able to define, meaning that you select, sort out what is really aligning to the project goal, to the organizational vision, to the need of the project. So you try to start sorting out what is applicable and what is not applicable, okay? And when you now sort out those things, you now create your work breakdown structure, which is the hierarchical decomposition of work to be done. Yes, we decompose, and at that point, you want to validate those scope. Validate means that you are going to seek approval, okay, from the stakeholder for the work that has been done. At this point, you're already executing, okay? And while that is happening, you go ahead and before you validate, you make sure you do control, quality control, or what we call verify scope. You would have verified before you validate. And during that time, you now start controlling to make sure that the work that is created actually meets the need of the stakeholders, okay? So that's what we have in these 3 phases, and that's what 6 processes, and that's what we'll do today. Learning outcome. At the end of this, we believe that we should be able to understand how to create a project scope. Now, at this level, very important, at this level, in your questions, during your PMP questions, you'll find out that they might give you a scenario that requirement has already been, requirement for the project has already been collected, right? And they are telling you that during when we're creating the work breakdown structure, we found out that there were a lot of things that were not aligning to the project goal. What should you have done? What should you, as a project manager, as a project leader, have done differently? You know that after collecting requirements, you don't work on that raw data. You need to sit down and sort those requirements before you create your work breakdown structure. So this will now give you a kind of narrow list or what is within the project scope boundaries, okay? And that's what you create your work breakdown structure for. and you now get your baseline. So you need to understand this plan step by step so that no matter how the question comes in, you'll be able to know where the problem is from. In some cases, they will tell you that a stakeholder, when you are at the end of the project, a stakeholder rejected the output or the outcome of the project. What should you have done, differently as a project manager? Was the output, was the deliverables, was it validated by the stakeholder? Was it approved? Was it demonstrated to the stakeholder? Did the stakeholder understand the seed and approve it? Before you deliver, you don't just call them and deliver. So that is why you need to understand these processes one after the other. For now, if you're not writing your exams before July, it's not going to be examinable. But in the new exams content outline, they brought back a lot of things. So you just have to understand them. So at the end of the day, what we need now is that you'll be able to create the plan. You'll be able to create the plan. When you create the plan, you should be able also to understand how to elicit for requirements for project managers using different tools and techniques. You should be able to develop what we call a project scope statement, and know what is supposed to be part of a scope statement. Is it just the scope? What about your out of scope? Where do you document project scope exclusions? Where do you document them? Then you also have to know how to learn how we create a work breakdown structure. Work decomposition is very, very important because at the planning stage, at the initiate phase, remember we had talked about the high level scope or requirement. We captured it. So we now have to sit down and collect requirements and start breaking those requirements so that we'll be able to understand the activities that is needed for us to create each of those work packages, which is like a work decomposition package. And we'll be able to know how to estimate our total duration, project duration from that. Without us decomposing tasks to its smallest unit, it might be difficult for us to understand how to plan schedule, all right? Or even understand the work that is needed to be done for that particular project to come to life. And of course, you understand how scope how the scope of work is validated and understand how to control what you've created. So these are going to be our learning outcomes. So please, when we are training, let's watch out for these things because after the class, of course, we talk about our course outcome. Again, we said that project scope management includes the process required to ensure that the project, includes all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. That's why we, after eliciting for the requirements, we make sure that we sort so that we are only working with the scope or the requirement that is needed for the project to be done, successfully. Managing the scope is the primary concern with defining and controlling what is and what is not included in the project. So when we are looking at scope management, not necessarily only what is included in the project that we define, we also define what is not included in the project. So we have all that. And we have, so when we remember we have our process group, let's look at how we can look at this. When we are planning the scope, anytime you see plan, know that we are already in the planning stage, planning process group. When we are collecting requirements, we're in the planning process group. When we define scope, which I said sorting out the requirements, we are still in the planning knowledge process group. When we are creating our work breakdown structure, we are still planning. But when it comes to validate scope and control scope, I said before it was in execution, it is in the monitoring and control scope. So everything that has to do with scope is actually at the planning phase. okay, at the planning phase. And of course, validating, verifying, and controlling is always for control and monitoring phase. Okay, having said that, we usually have what we call the product scope and the project scope. Project managers, what is the difference between the product scope and the project scope? What do you understand by the product scope and the project scope? Let's even define it before we look at the difference. What is a product? We've talked about the project. We know what a project is. What is a product?
The product is part of, is a deliverable.
Okay. The outcome of the project, the conduit of a project. People consume products. People don't consume projects. So when you are planning for a project, when you are managing a project, you know that the outcome of that project is the product, and that is what you understand people would use. So when you are planning for a product, it's more like you want to do a long term. So when you're looking at the project scope, you're looking at the result, the expected result, the potentially shippable product or results. What are the features that product must have? What are the requirements that you must be able to, understand? Is the result, is it going to be a tangible product or an intangible product? Is it a service? Is it a result or even a process? Okay, so that's what we call as a product. And of course, every product will have its own product scope. Now, when we are talking about project has to do short term. It has to do with the activity that is needed to use to create the project. And as such, this is where most project managers make mistake. Ordinarily, in the project environment, you should have a skill set like the business analyst that is also involved in, being able to understand the need of the customer and, come up with products that can meet that need. So they are responsible to managing the product scope, right? In some cases, if it's an agile team, you could have a role that we call the product owner, that is actually the person that maximizes the value in which the product or the project is meant to deliver, represents the need, okay, manages the need of the customer, okay, in the project. So they manage that product scope. But you as a project manager, you are involved in managing the work of a project, okay, and of the project and the project alone. But as of today, you will not have any organization that will want to employ you to just come and manage only project work. They will expect you to have the product knowledge. They call it product thinking. You must be able to think long term. Short term is project. All the activities ends when the project ends. So, but the product, which is the result, would also be affected if you were not able to manage the requirements. So we have that. As a project manager, you'll be expected to have your product, have your product thinking, your system thinking, and even your design thinking. So it's difficult for you to just come out and say, oh, I'm just a project manager. And that's why PMI will expect you to be a lifelong learner. It means that after project, you still have to learn more. Develop yourself constantly. The world is evolving. Businesses are evolving. Organizations are evolving. And sometimes they will just need a single role to be able to manage all this. So you should have it, okay? And that would make you stand out from just ordinary project manager. So product scope concerns with the characteristics of a product, service, or result of a project, the features, the solutions, the functions that characterizes a product or a service or a result. Okay, whereas the project scope involves, like we said, the work, the short-term work that is involved in creating that product, the work that needs to be accomplished to deliver the product, the activities that we are going to do, how do we manage those activities, okay, to prevent gold plating. So when we are managing product projects, there are times that, if not properly managed, could affect our timeline, it could affect our overall cost, it could even affect the scope. Okay, so as such, it's good for project managers to watch out for two things, which is gold plating and scope creep. Scope creep is when you have uncontrolled increase in the scope. And most times it comes from the clients. When we say, oh, I needed ABC, and they come back tomorrow, they said, I need this. They keep giving you different things that does not align with the business need. Don't forget that before a project was being initiated, you had done what we call business justification, which is justifying the reason for the project, validating that need, verifying that need, and you all came to an agreement that we should create that need. If the scope keeps getting expanded uncontrolled, it can make you to miss out or to misalign with the project vision. And this is how projects fail. When you see people say projects are no longer viable, it's because the scope has been uncontrollably increased, okay? And as such, as a project manager, you need to watch out for that, please. And also, one of the things that could also affect you as a project manager is gold plating. And when it comes to gold plating, it is done by the team. A project, a customer needed this phone with this color, and you finished it, and your developers are still here polishing to make it darker than what the customer needed. Doing extra work that is not in the scope. When once you satisfy the scope, in project management, quality is defined as the ability to do what? To satisfy or create the customer expectations, or to satisfy the acceptance criteria, okay, is what we define as quality. When once you do that, and you now start doing extra work that was not called for, you're wasting time, in some cases, money, okay, and as such, it's still going to affect the outcome of the project. So please watch out for those two things, gold plating and that. So we talked about the project scope plan. So we also want to look at what we call the project requirements. Project requirements are the agreed upon conditions or capability of a product, solution, service, or outcome that the project is designed to satisfy. And that is what we go in to collect. Requirements are determined and documented needs and expected project outcome and expectation of the project cost. All the things that you are going to need to create the project outcome is what we call requirement. Another name for that is, it could be features, right? The features, the deliverables, the things that has to be done in the project. In Agile, I think we call this the product backlog, okay? And you have here your elicitation techniques, okay? What are those techniques, those tools, those methods that you're going to use to collect those requirements, okay? There are different types of tools you can use for your elicitation. Okay, you could use your document analysis, you could use your focus group. Document analysis just means that you are going to review historical documents or your knowledge repository. You sit down and say, oh, for this thing we are going to do, let's do a review on it. What in that organization, what do you have? What has been existing? What document did you use in your previous project? What knowledge do we have in the shared repository? What can we pick out that could help and guide us to plan for the new project? So you can use that to check. Let's say you've done a similar project in the past. You're building a 2-bedroom flat, and you're building it again, right? For another organization, you want to go in there and check how many, what were the scope, how many packs of cement did we use, what was the cost, just to compare. So we call that sometimes historical information or that knowledge repository. So that's what we call in the document analysis. And we have the focus group. Sometimes you might just have to bring in, similar interests. Okay, when you're trying to get requirement, get information that is needed for the project, you bring in similar group of stakeholders, and sometimes it could be subject matter to know more about their expectations, okay, and attitude about a proposed product, services, or their needs. So when you are talking about a focus group, it means that the people that are coming in are similar. You want to do girls advocacy for young children, you bring in only girls, you don't mix them with boys because you're trying to get a particular information and you have to create the right atmosphere. You bring in, if it's for boys, you bring for boys, you bring for women and all those kind of things. Because if they don't have similar ideas, then what some people use is workshop. Okay, so when you are doing workshop, it means that you have diverse interests, okay, diverse needs coming together. And as such, you use your facilitation techniques to be able to facilitate teams with diverse need. Again, you have your questionnaires. Sometimes you just want to ask questions, He said questionnaires are a set of questions designed to quickly accumulate information for a large number of respondents. Sometimes you could do them in terms of surveys. Questions, just put a form, ask them questions when there are so many people. We're actually building a property management system. And we are looking at the pain points of the real estate agents when they are listing, when they have properties. Property owners, what are your pain points? We're able to gather that one of the things that they need is visibility. And when we are talking to maybe real estate in Lagos, there are much. We can't start looking for one after the other. We want to be able to get features that is needed to build a good platform that can serve that need, that purpose. So we do a questionnaire and we send it to groups, to teams. So when you are trying to collect large numbers, you could use questionnaires or, benchmarking, project managers. When should we use, how is benchmarking useful in elicitation, requirement elicitation or collection? How and when should we use benchmarking? It's here, but I just need it in your own language. Project managers.
Yeah, when you are comparing what you want to do to best in class,
Okay. Thank you, sir.
That's when you benchmark.
All right. How do you compare? Compare with what?
You look at the planned versus the actual.
Okay. Plan versus the actual. Is that one not? Okay. Let's take it. All right. Thank you, sir. Any other person? That is variance. When you are looking at plan versus, I think that should be classified as variance, right?
Variance is
the difference.
The difference.
Yeah. So what did you plan? What did you actually get? You understand? Benchmarking is in terms of elicitation, is when you are trying to, compare, right? Compare, okay, actual or planned, right? Process and everything. Benchmarking most times is used when you are trying, in terms of elicitation. Don't forget the context we are using now is the elicitation. When you are trying to compare practices, compare processes, compare features with either your plan work and with the competition. right? In terms of best practices to generate what? More ideas, to be able to come up with features that will be needed to put your own product at an advantage. Also, comparing planned, it can be planned. You're not comparing plan with actual. You could compare the planned work. You can compare your actual work. So that all stands differently, not that you are comparing plan with actual. When you are comparing plan with against the actual, right? That is a variance analysis. Okay, so when you have organization, in some cases, you can benchmark against your competition to find out what they are doing well, what are the gaps, so that you can take advantage of that. Sometimes it could be between processes, it could be even internal. You're trying to, compare one department to the other, one product against the other and all those things. So when you are talking about benchmarking in terms of elicitation, you are looking at what is the gap out there. You're trying to find out those gaps that you can now, create a solution to meet that need so that your product can, of course, have better need. So that's what it means. So we've talked about facilitation. We also have what we call the quality deployment function, or we call it house of quality. They are used mostly in the manufacturing field to determine the new development requirements. So it is also used for what's it called? In terms of quality, when you're trying to check the necessary quality, that this quality standard for a particular project. Quality deployment function, I call it house of quality, is used to map or translate the business need to the technical specification. When you are trying to translate, the customer says, I need a website that is fast. I need a solution that is durable. I need a process that is very efficient. And you are trying to translate that to what we call a technical specification by understanding what you need to do technically to be able to create that business need. That's what we use the quality deployment function for. It's a tool. You might want to look that up and read it, okay? And also we have a context diagram, which is a visual depiction of the product scope showing the business system and how the other people interact with the system. Like we said, most products, how is it going to be used? Okay, so sometimes you might just want to map it out and see how the system, primary users, secondary users are going to interact with the project. So when you have it mapped out, you can be able to identify those needs that will help you to create that deliverable. Sometimes it could be prototype. Prototype, most times, is just a mini version of your project. Most times we use all these techniques with our stakeholders, like prototyping. They come up with an idea, you create that mini version to present to them for validation. What I do in most projects is that before I even go in, I'll validate their ideas, because you see, a lot of people can dream. A lot of people can need things. They will need things that might not necessarily be useful to them. Okay. And sometimes when they are telling you, it might be different from what you think they mean. So you could use that to show them and get their feedback. The whole idea of prototyping is to be able to get early feedback, to adjust your requirements to meet those feedbacks. In some cases, you have storyboarding. Okay, storyboarding is a prototype method that can use visuals or image to illustrate the process, okay, or present the project outcome. Storyboards are useful to illustrate how a product, services, or application will function to operate when it is completed. It's a board where you just feature, okay, all your stories. We call it user stories, which are usually the need. Most times it's used in software projects. Storyboards might be used to show how customer service application will function from a user perspective by showing the result to each option available within the application. Don't forget, all these things does not mean when you are coming in for a project, you have to do everything. You can decide to just do mere observation. You can just decide to elicit using requirements or questionnaires or surveys. You can decide to elicit with focus groups. You might decide, with these days, AI has even been introduced when it comes to eliciting for project requirements. For your project, AI will give you suggestions that you've never thought in your life. It will even compare it, benchmark it with industries, with organizations that you don't even know they exist. And it will come up, it will create a gap analysis for you and come up with features that will help you to stand out. So yes, in the next, the new 8 PMBOK, the exams content, AI has been fully introduced. I sent it to you. You can go ahead and just read it ahead. But for your exams, you need to just pay attention to the 7th book. Okay, so AI is now in, it is now a role. It has now been fully legalized in project management. So when you are using it to elicit for your requirement, don't be shy about it. Know that you are encouraged to use it because it works with past data as well. So many people would have done what you are already going to do. So why are you spending hours before now to do questionnaires? You now start mapping, creating, visualizing those results, then presenting those results. It could take you a month to just work on elicitation. With the AI, you can do that within 5 minutes. Everything in total. So it is now legalized. You can use AI to help you in project. We also have the one we call the project traceability metrics. This is when you have to trace each requirement to the need, to the stakeholder that needs it, so that you'll be able to properly manage, because you've already identified those stakeholders. You'll now be able to properly engage those stakeholders to give you the kind of support that you need to create the requirement. And that's what we call in the requirement traceability metrics, okay? It can be used to track the progress of the requirement throughout the project lifecycle to verify that the requirement has been met once the project does this out, okay? Does this out. It can also be helpful to manage project scope and any proposed change to the scope, okay? Now, this is what we call a scope statement. We are going to come back to it. We have not yet here, but just look at what a scope statement is. We said it's a description of a project scope, major deliverables, assumptions, constraints, and what? Out of scopes, okay? Anything that is even out of the, can be in the scope statement. So a scope statement is a statement that a document that describes everything around the project scope, okay? So for PMI best practice, it's saying that your project scope must have your project scope description, which is, it just elaborate and describes the project, okay? Summary of the objective of the scope, okay? And you have your scope criteria, which is a set of conditions in which those scope will have to meet before it will be accepted. In Agile, we call this definition of done. It has to be in your scope statements. For your scope to be say, oh, this deliverable has been created, is done, it must meet a certain kind of criteria. You have your deliverables, which is your unique result. You have your project exclusions. Please note, in your project scope of statement, you have your project exclusions. What does this project not, what are outside the boundaries of this project? What does it not cover? Explicitly stating what is out of scope to help manage the stakeholder expectations so that your team don't waste time creating things that are not needed. Okay, so you can now focus. The whole idea of understanding what scope and what is out of scope is for you to be able to focus. Example of out of scope. Okay, what is an example? We're trying to build a 2-bedroom apartment, okay, as a developers, as a developing a real estate development agency. We got a contract to build maybe 5 units of 2-bedroom flats. To build, out of scope, we are building, or we are not involved in marketing. So you need to classify that so that once we are finished putting up the building, the stakeholders will not expect us to start selling it off. So this is what your project covers, and this is what is always very good to, We also have something that you're going to need all through, which I feel is the most important thing. When people elicit for requirements and they bring out what they need, and there are some things that they don't have facts to defend that requirement. And that is what we put in the assumption. Most times, all the projects start from assumptions. They are just mere needs, mere thinking, oh, this is what we think can happen. So when we make assumptions, assumptions are factors in the planning process that are considered to be true, real or certain without a proof of demonstration. So at that point, you don't want to throw them away. When you are sorting from the requirements you've collected, you will have the ones that you create the work breakdown structure, which you create your scope baseline. You also have those other requirements that you had elicited, but you could not have real factors to do what? To back it up. You do not have facts. You do not have evidence for it. You want to still keep it. So you don't throw it away. That's why we put in what we call the assumption log. Okay. So we've talked about what scope management is. The scope management, we said, is a process of creating scope plan that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. We've done that. So the first thing is the plan. How do we create a plan? Primary input. For us to be able to create a scope plan, project managers, we will need a project charter. Why do we need a project charter to create a scope plan? Why should we need a project charter? PMI best practice says for you to be able to create a scope management plan, you must need a project charter. Why? We defined what a project charter was. So I believe everyone knows now what a project charter is.
And to show that the scope was approved, and then to itemize all that is required in the scope and the approvals and the respective stakeholders involved.
Okay, thank you very much. It means that the project charter has the overall project objective, the need, whether it's high level. We know what we are building. We know the big picture. We know the expected need of that project. In the project charter, we said we could have the high level needs, the requirements for us to start eliciting from. So it comes as a primary input. In some cases, you might even need your business plan. Okay. Then you also have your project management plans. It could be your quality plan for every scope that you want to plan. You want to know the technical specification, the quality expectations of that scope. So you want to come in with your plan, quality plan, your project lifecycle description, and your different approaches, depending on the features or the scope or what you are creating. What are we going to be using? Is this going to be agile? Are we using traditional? Are we using hybrid? Is it data? Should we be using lean? Should we be using Six Sigma and the rest? So you want to know all that, okay? And your enterprise environmental factor. And we said that enterprise environmental factors were those factors that are beyond us. They are those factors that are beyond our control. And as such, we need to prepare for. So what are the enterprise environmental factors that you think could, if not properly planned for, could affect the scope plan that we are trying to create, or to can affect us, the scope, us managing the scope well? What are those enterprise environmental factors? Project managers. Okay, scope. What are the enterprise environmental factors? You're trying to elicit or create a plan. What are the things that you need to understand about the scope that are not within you as an organization, as a project team, is not within your control? And as such, you have to plan adequately for them so that they don't become a constraint to your project or a limiting factor. What are they? Yes. Mr. Zach. Okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was going to say external factors, right?
Yeah.
Such as maybe I'll say forex, volatility, maybe
Okay.
weather,
Weather, yes. Weather.
yeah,
Yeah. Why did you
yeah.
take weather? Let's start from weather.
I mean, you planned. I mean, you can't predict it, right? You can't predict what the
Okay.
weather would be. Yeah.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
you need to, when you are looking on how to bring in your scope, right? Or how to manage your scope, you want to know what are the requirements? What will you be bringing in? At what time? What is the weather condition, right? Will it be favorable for this project at this time for us to bring in this requirement or this scope, right? You want to find out that you want to look at the market conditions. Sometimes you need to buy. Okay, what are the market conditions? What is the exchange rate when it comes to those requirements, to those needs? Sometimes it could even be, something that fluctuates. You need to be able to have a good plan for it. Get estimate on why you are having that in case there is any kind of fluctuations, okay? Sometimes it could be legal government policies. There could be a certain sanctions on some materials. So you need to be able to plan for these things. It could be legal, right? It could be anything. Internally, it could be your organizational culture. How long does it take to approve this particular thing? Okay. It could be the structure. Who are the people that will give the power or the authority for you to be able to get this work started? Sometimes it could be compliance. Yeah.
So can I just say something around this organizational culture and maybe the duration? So sometimes we know how long it takes. Like in my own case, right, to have for some strategic meetings, you must need some key stakeholders, and to get them, you must give at least 2 weeks notice on their calendars. So since we already have that in our mind that it could take such a time, can we not plan that and factor that in our timeline?
Yes, that is what the whole
would that be within our control or out of control? Since I
that
already
is
know and
that
I'm
is
going to
not
factor it.
that is out of your control, because as a
Okay.
project manager, you can't force them to accept that thing in 1 week.
Right.
So that's why we are planning for us to be able to manage this scope, or for us to be able to, get these approvals for this scope. We need to send out these things 2 weeks. So it comes as an agreement for the team, right? For us to be able to make sure that these documents are sent in for approvals, okay, so that they can come in and for us to start working on it, because the organizational structure, delays, culture could cause delays. So if you did not consider these things at the point of your plan, it might be difficult when the work starts. So when you are creating a scope plan, everything that is not within your control as a project manager, as the project team, you must be able to create and make plans for that. Yes, Mr. Adeyemi. Go ahead, Mr. Adeyemi. Okay, I don't know if you can unmute. I saw you raise your hand, but if you can, just find the unmute button and speak. Okay? Or you can send us a chat on this so we read it out for others to understand. Then we also have what we call the organizational process assets. And these are things that are internal and are within your control as a project manager. For scope plan, the previous project that they've been doing, how do they do it? How do they create a plan? What are their processes? What are their procedures? What are their policies when they are creating plans? Do they have a template? What are their existing assets? What is their document? What document do we have to go through? Those things you have control over. You want to create a plan, and there's already a template for a plan. Why, instead of going to start looking for a template, just go in and say, oh, we already have this. We already have this. This is around the organization. So those things are the things that you as a PM have control over, right? You need to identify them so that you can be able to work well. And when you identify them, you have the expert knowledge. Project managers. Why do we need experts? What is expert knowledge? We're taking time because it's our first process. When we are going to other ones, we want to believe we all understand what it means. Okay? What is expert knowledge?
We call it
subject matter expert.
Subject matter expert, yeah.
Thank you
Center
very
of
much.
excellence in some cases.
Yeah. So what do you do as a project manager? Sometimes you will need to consult them. You might be a project manager, but that is not around your project knowledge or your business knowledge, right? So you need to consult them. I just got a contract to build a fintech app for one of the leading asset management, financial asset management firm. They're already operating, so they are trying to, digitalize their processes by creating an app, right? Very good project. Am I in finance? Do I know, have I ever done asset management? No, I don't even know what that means. Do you understand? I know mutual funds, bonds, I know bills, I know stocks, right? It's only treasury bill I know. I don't have any idea about that. So as a project manager going to build such, what do you think I would do? I need to constantly consult with the expert knowledge. Find out what they are currently using, map out their needs. Even when even the elicitation, the requirement, they would have given me what they think they need. And I'm supposed to, as a project manager, just validate those needs, okay? And maybe make more research on them. But I cannot work in isolation. As a project manager, most of the things that makes us to shrink in, we are not able to go out because we feel that we must know everything. You don't need to know everything. Okay, just know your knowledge, your project management knowledge. Know it very well. When it comes to other things, you can adjust gradually, but work with your expert judgments. I work with tech teams. I don't play with back ends. I don't play with front ends. I've got to understand a lot from them. I learn every day. So I don't know, but I'm open to learning. So when there is a need, when there are complaints, the first time I heard APIs, I was like, what is this one again? Okay, so you keep learning. You need your expert knowledge. I do not prepare my sprints, my my product backlog without running through them. I have to run through them with the ideas of what I want, the plan and everything. And I always come in with their input. Yes, when you are managing scope, please look for subject matter experts and consult with them, okay? And of course, data analysis that we said is about being able to analyze your current data or your past data, okay? You did scope, you did this similar project. What were the project data? What were the project information? Analyze them. In some cases, you could come up with alternative analysis, okay? And your meetings. The output of this plan is your scope management plan. Don't forget, we want to plan scope management. What do you think will be the output? Scope plan. So we have that document. The scope plan is the document we have, and we have our requirements management plan. This requirement, at this point, we are going in the requirement management plan, we'll see what it is. It just tells us on how we plan to manage requirements. Requirements are those features that we are going to be eliciting, collecting. So how do we plan to collect it? How do we plan to sort it? How do we plan? So every of those decisions is going to be in this plan. So it means that when we are managing this scope and we run into issues, we as a team had come up and said, oh, when it comes to elicitation, we agreed in the plan that we're going to do interviews. We agreed in the plan that for us to collect requirements, we're going to do both surveys and questionnaires. We agreed we are going to do mere observation. We're going to go into the field and ask questions. We agreed, let's use AI. So you must have a plan on how you intend to create the project scope or manage the project scope. And that's what the managed scope plan is. Plan are basically just documents, nothing else. Okay, but you need to know how to bring it to life. You need the input combined with the output or with the tools and techniques to be able to get your needed output. So this is what we have in the scope plan. What the process for preparing the scope statements is going to be there. The process that enables the creation of the work breakdown structure. Okay, are we going to create it? What format are we going to use? Okay, process that establishes how scope baseline will be approved and maintained. 2 weeks, these people will not get them on CITO. We have to send in the scope management plan, the scope baseline for approval at least 2 weeks before the time that we are expecting because of our stakeholders, the culture, the value, organizational culture and value, and make standards. Okay, we need to work ahead. We have it in the plan. So you see, for us, being able to manage scope well is our ability to conform to the things that we have stated that we are going to do when it comes to scope management. That is quality. That is performance in the traditional project management. In Agile, it is different. Agile is not interested in all your processes, your plans, your documentation. Our own is value, results. Give us something, we call it working software, a workable product, something we can quickly use. Don't dull us with all your plans and your processes and everything. But in the traditional project management, the predictive method, they are plan-centric, they are process-centric. So we must be able to abide to this. Okay. So this is what we call the requirement plan. Right? Remember, we said the output is both the scope plan and the requirement management plan. Okay, so the requirement management plan is a component of the project management plan that describes how projects and product requirements will be analyzed. How are we going to identify, how are we going to analyze, how are we going to document, how are we going to manage it, how requirement activities will be planned, tracked, and reported. It is a result of a scope plan. It's inside a scope plan. Configuration management, how will change be initiated? We have to put it. If we have scope change, how do we manage those changes? How do we analyze it? Best practice has told us how to do it, but based on your project, you have to come out and say, this is how we are going to watch out and manage these things, okay? How do we prioritize, right? Metrics that will be used and the rationale for using them. Traceability structure that reflect the requirements. How are we going to capture these requirements? Okay. The next process, we are finished with process 1. Process 2, don't forget we talked about 6 processes. Process 2 is to collect requirements. Okay. Collect the features, which is the process of determining, documenting, and managing the stakeholders' needs and requirements to meet the project objective. Requirements are what the stakeholder needs from the project or the product. The benefits, the key benefit of this is that it provides the basis for defining the product scope and the project scope. Gather it. Everything that, you've been able to, that, of course, the need, the need of the project, the vision, the expected results. Okay, so for us to be able to meet these project objectives, what do we need? We need to elicit for them. And of course, we have our project charter, we have our project management plan, it could be our scope plan. It's a scope plan, very important. For us to collect requirements, we need our scope, that plan. How are we going to collect it is there. Our requirement management plan and our stakeholder engagement plan. Project managers, why do we need our stakeholders engagement plan when we are trying to collect or elicit for requirements? Why do we need that? Why? Project manager, why is stakeholder engagement plan needed for us to collect requirements? It's a question.
Yes, so that we know what they need, their expectations and requirements.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Because we are building for them. For instance, you're building a product. Who consumes the product? The customer. Who is the customer? Your stakeholders. Who sponsors it? Right? So you need to know their need. You need to trace back each requirement to each stakeholders. Let's say during our last Six Sigma training, we had a student that came from pension funds, and he said, when we're talking about stakeholder management, he said he's actually managing 24 stakeholders. When he started listing them, I was like, wow, right? And each of them have different needs. How do you now be able to collect those, to understand those needs? Is to be able to engage each of those stakeholders. And as such, for you to be able to know how to properly engage your stakeholders, in the stakeholder engagement plan, that plan would have consisted the list of your stakeholders, who your stakeholders are. It would have also told you their different levels in the project, their power, their authority, their interest in the project. And as such, you would have come up with how to get either their support to be able to create that need in terms of resources, in terms of approvals, validations, anything that you need from them. So you need to be able to understand how to properly engage with those your stakeholders, to elicit for requirements, to collect requirements from them, to understand their need. At the initial level, it could just be, oh, I need ABC. Go back to them, have a seat with them. Why do you need this? What will success look like? What are your fears? Understand how to be able to engage with them, to move them from where they are to where they want to be, which is usually the product output. So you need your stakeholder engagement plan to properly know how to engage your stakeholders and elicit and collect information that will be needed for your requirements. Okay. Project documents. Sometimes you can have your, yes.
So would you say that this plan is, you've documented all their needs in this engagement plan, this stakeholder engagement plan?
Yeah, when we'll do it as a topic. Okay. Yeah, we'll do it as a topic. We have stakeholder management plan as a topic, but just know this level, at this level, right? Then you have your project documents, could be assumption log. Don't forget assumption log with those requirements that you have collected or you are looking at, but at that point, you don't really have clarification. You don't really have fact to back up. You don't have, I don't have enough information on it. So you just want to keep it. Sometimes when you're looking at potential risks for the project, that's where you go to. So always keep your assumption log, whether it was useful or not, just keep it, right? Because could be lessons learned from your previous project. You have your stakeholder register, which contains the list of stakeholders and everything. You have your project documents. It could be your project business case and agreements. Okay, very important. You're talking about scope. Okay, you're talking about scope. You need to know some of those scopes, some of those resources that is under that scope that would need to be, that can be made or that you can directly procure or you can directly bring in, and the ones that are not within your control that you need to use vendors or contracts. Okay, so you need to have a binding document, which could be in form of agreements. Okay, for the scope, you need to bring that in. If it's going to be your SLA, your NL, that's service level agreement, your non-disclosure, your bid contracts, anything you want that pertains to your project, you need to bring it in. And your enterprise environmental factor, which we know, and the organizational process assets. Again, expert judgment. You need to consult with your experts, subject matter experts. And at the point that you are trying to gather data, you can use either of this. You can use your brainstorming, right? We'll talk about what brainstorming could be: your interviews, your questionnaires, your focus group, depending on the nature of the project. It could be your benchmarking and the rest. Again, tailoring comes in. It does not mean you will do brainstorming for collecting data. You now go back and do interview. No. Tailoring matters. Understand your project and know the best method for eliciting. In the next the new PM edition, PMBOK, the 8th edition, you see that AI is part of the data gathering. You could have your data analysis in some cases, which is your document analysis. You could do your decision voting. Of course, especially when you have maybe your focus group or your workshop and ideas, or during your brainstorming sessions, ideas are being shared. How do you take decisions? Okay, you have your voting. Don't forget what we did. 3 types of voting. We did it. Unanimous. What? And unanimous, what happens? Please go back. You guys should go back to that. Okay, so you do your voting, you have your fist of 5, anything that matters, go back and check that. And you have your multi-criterial decisions, okay, when you are having to make decisions not based on only one option. You need to come in your data presentation. When you have now collected the data, how do you present data? Do you want to use affinity diagram, group ideas? You use affinity diagram to group you've collected those requirements, you can use it to group based on their functionality. You could use your mind mapping where you start mapping out. We'll look at that now. And interpersonal team skills, you could have your nominal group techniques, which is about voting off. When you are doing brainstorming, you use your nominal group techniques, which is about prioritization of your votes. Okay, the ranking of your votes. We've decided, okay, how do we rank those ideas? Could be your observations, your conversations, and your facilitation. As a project manager, you are directly responsible to facilitating communications and collaboration. So when it comes to meetings, you have to come up and know how to facilitate, especially diverse team to one result, okay, to maybe a positive close result. You have your context diagram in some cases, or your prototyping. And the output is going to be your requirement documentation. And of course, your requirement traceability metrics. So let's look at each. This is when you talk about mind mapping. Usually when you start from one big idea and you start mapping out, okay, you have a lot of things in your mind, what you think, and all those things. So you just start, you want to mind map your stakeholders. You have, like the person I said had about 24 stakeholders in one organization. So you want to start mapping them based on their similarities. Okay, so you can do that. You can do the affinity, just like you see when you go to the library, you see biology books in one section. That is affinity requirements. You diagram, you group similar ideas, okay, and you start grouping out. And this is what we call the context diagram, okay? This is the context diagram. It just shows you, let's say, doing the ATM, this is what we think the ATM should do for us. Should be able to have a key, card reader, customer display, printouts, cash dispense, account database, and all those things. So you can also use this to elicit or to present your ideas. And this is the output, the requirement documentation, which we said, this is not the requirement plan. We've already produced the requirement plan. Now we are looking at the requirement documentation. You need to now specify your requirements. What are the business requirements? What is stakeholders' requirements? What is solution requirements? For every project, there is always a need. Either a need to do what? To solve a problem, or a need to create value, right? So whatever your need is, you now create a solution for that need. What are those things that you need to do? Commitment that you need to do to bring that need to life, okay? That's what you have in your solution requirements. You have your transition and readiness requirements. Transition requirements are temporary. They are the temporary capabilities that you need to do to move a project from the current stage to the future stage. Okay, we'll finish doing the work of the project. It could be like, example, you want to migrate data from one point to the other. So that when we want to finish that requirement or that migration, data migration, it ends, that process ends. That's what we call the transition or readiness requirement. You could have your project requirement, which is basically the activities to be done in the project is different from your product requirements. Quality will also have their requirements. Okay, so that is what you have in your requirement documentation. You document, separate all your requirements, stakeholders, their needs, separate everything. Okay, so that you don't meet. There's what we call functional requirements and non-functional requirements. And that's what, when you come for business analysis, for those of you that wants to do the course, you see there are some functional requirement that has to do with the features, direct features that is needed to build the solution. And there are also non-functional that you can't really quantify. It has to do maybe with the speed, the durability, the usability. You understand, all those things are the non-functional. So you need to document all of them in that. So this is just basically talking about what we've talked about. Okay. Congratulations, Ene. Yeah.
Thank you. And a quick one before, I'm sorry to digress. So my friend just wrote her exams today.
Okay.
And guess what? The past questions you sent to us, everything was on the exam.
How did you send it to her?
So she called me while she was writing the exam, and I sent her the past questions. I said, please help me glance if you would see any of these questions. And she was like, all these old questions came out at the exam.
So you see those past questions are about 5 sets of it. So please, as soon as you have all this knowledge, start practicing our past questions. Those are live. I got it from the PM. Normally, you're supposed to pay $150 to get those past questions, right? But I was able to extract it. So I'm sharing with my students. They call it exam hall, right? There's about 5 sets of questions. As soon as you're done with class, start practicing. Just be practicing, practice with test your speed, because it's not just about you knowing it. So she was able to pass. All my students passed with above target in all their domains. So I hope this set is going to do above target in all their domain. I'm not expecting target though. I'm expecting above target, okay? Practice until you are. Yes, Mr. Zach.
Yes, first of all, I want to apologize. Good evening. I came late today because I was trapped somewhere. You said all your students passed above target in all their...
Yes.
Got above target. Wow. That is a very huge testimony.
Yes.
Very huge. The thing struck me.
I train with confidence.
Wow. That is good.
I'm not just preparing you guys for just the exams, but
thank you, Mom.
When it comes to best practice, I remember one of my students that is practicing in the US. He said before he left Nigeria, he had done project management, right? And he went abroad, he was applying, and he was failing all the interviews. He couldn't pass because he was not relating. But just coming to my class, he's now working as a project man and he's earning good money. You understand? So please, guys, it's not just the exams. For those of us that are not ready to write, though, just for even the industry best practice, you have it here, okay? Some people do this training in 5 days. I hope you know. 5 days, you finish it, you don't know anything. You go and write your exams and you fail. They don't care. They will call it another batch. We're not taking any other batch until we finish this, okay? So, yeah, it's a success group. So we have here your interpersonal team skills. We've talked about that. All these, we've talked about that, okay? And you have your interviews, what you do at interviews, of course, you know, is about identifying features and functions. Deliverables can be structured or unstructured, or interview, just basically nothing to put more, just basically just taking interview, asking people questions. It could be formal or not formal, written formats or caption in a large group as questionnaires. Okay, for questionnaires, right? That is like, like I said, I saw this in one recent exams question. When do you use, okay, it was in CPAP exams. When do you use, surveys? It's usually, questionnaire surveys are usually when you are trying to capture large group information, okay? The observation is between physically technique used to learn how about, specific role. Focus group, casual interactive information sharing, moderator guided, included stakeholders and estimate, yields qualitative data, right? And of course, you have here your workshops, okay? Season organized by project manager to determine requirement, enable require. So when you're looking at the difference between these two is that this one is more of a focused group of people, unlike the workshop that has to do with diverse interests, okay, coming together. And they all have advantage and disadvantage. And this is when we talk about benchmarking, okay? Required requires best practice to make comparison, right? Evaluate and compare organizational or project practice with others. It can be internal, it can be external. Identify best practice in order to exceed them. Okay, you have here prioritization. Remember we talked about nominal group technique, that when you bring in your requirements, you should be able to, in terms of prioritize them in terms of value, okay? The one that has the highest value, the one you look at the risks associated to the value and maybe the dependencies. We do a lot of prioritization in Agile, not in the predictive, okay? So prioritization, we have different methods of prioritization. We still do it, but let me just go through it. We have the must have, could have, the must-cow. Must-cow is must have, should have, could have, and would have. In a project, what are those features that you must have? This must have is directly proportional to quality. Without the must have, the project does not have any quality, and as such, it cannot even satisfy the customer. Okay? You have here your should have, which is not as important as the must have. And you have your could have and the indifference. You have your Kanu model, where you have to use the delighters, exciters, satisfiers, dissatisfiers, and features that the client is indifferent. We are building a public toilet, right, in Etiosa local government area. We got a contract to build public toilets. Yeah, so what do we do? What are the must have? A toilet, okay, what are the exciters? What are the delighters? What are the satisfied? A person uses the toilet and does not see water. So that feature is very important. They are your delighters, they are your exciters. Without those features, the customer will not be happy. They are ones that just merely just satisfies, okay? It's good to come out and you have way to wash your hands. There are ones that, okay, if they are not there, the customer will feel it. The customer is going into a toilet and there's lightning. Of course, he uses the toilet and goes away. But if the customer goes into the toilet and there's no light, the customer becomes very dissatisfied. You need to come up with those features too, right? And there are also features that are indifferent. Whether you put paint, you are putting white paint, cream paint, brown paint. Someone that is praised is not concerned. They are indifferent about the color of the wall. So when you are eliciting for requirements, you need to understand how to, do your different prioritization. You have here again the one we call the paid comparison analysis, and you have your 100-point method. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that testimony, Ene. I'm happy. I'm confident. So please, you want to use this question right before, try and write before July. From July on your own. I need to now go again, pay money, and be able to do the exam hall to make sure I bring in the best questions, okay? So you have here mind mapping.
So it's just one exam?
Yeah, it's just one exam. Yeah, one exam.
How many a year? Once a year?
Once in 3 years. As a matter of fact, it's one
way.
exam. The other one is just we call it recertification. It's just about few questions just to test you on the new improved best practice. Okay.
Yeah. So I was asking, how many times in a year do they write this exam?
No, anytime you're ready. Is individual preference. It's not like one general exams for everyone. Anytime you're ready, go ahead and write. Yeah.
Okay.
I did posted, whether you're writing or not, please go and apply. I need you to apply. I posted on how to apply on PMI. Just go and test it. Try it. Just apply it. You understand? Apply. PMI, when it comes to project management, is the number one. It's the biggest, the largest project management accreditation body. Most organization recognizes it and they need it. Okay. So we have here, this is affinity diagram. I'm sorry, a context diagram. We've talked about it. I was showing you an example of ATM. And this is prototyping. Prototyping, you can prototype your ideas. You can prototype every phase result, every product increment, sprint increment, you can prototype, okay? You can have here your requirement traceability metrics. I said you have to trace each requirement to the stakeholders, okay? And as such, you're able to manage better. Again, please understand that tailoring is very important. The third process is we've done what? What was the first process? Project management plan. We've done, this is the fourth. So we've done, what's it called? We've done collection, requirements collection. Okay, this is the third. We are now trying to define scope. We want to define scope. And at the point of introduction, when I was introducing this class, I said that the defined scope is about you sitting, you've collected requirements, plenty requirements for the project. Now you need to sit down and start sorting out, okay, those requirements that may or may really align with the project or could align with the project need, and the ones that do not align with the project need. Just being able to sort out different requirements. Some could be the product scope, some could be the project scope, some could be the product requirement. At this point, let's use requirements. Some could be the product requirement, some could be the scope requirement, some could be the project requirements. Do you understand? Stakeholder requirements, technical requirements, quality requirements. You are being able to start sorting and differentiating and categorizing them. That's what we mean by the defined scope. Defined scope is the process of developing a detailed description of the project and the product. The key benefit of this process is that it describes the product. It describes that product, okay, and the results or boundaries and accepted criteria. So this is what we have here. Same reason why we have a project charter, we have a scope plan, requirement plan, any kind of project plan that you want to bring in. You also have your project documents, okay? You have your requirement document. Remember your requirement document I talked about? You have different types of requirement being categorized. You bring it in as a primary input, your risk register. Why do you need your risk register here? Project managers, why is risk register an input for us to define scope or sort scope? Why? Project managers, we are trying to sort scope. Why do we need a risk register? Are you guys hearing me?
I need to know if it's a risk you want to take at this time, and how relevant it is. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Very much. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was saying maybe it's a risk you want to determine if it's a risk you want to take at this time and how it relates to the project.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, when you do what we call scope decomposition, yes, Mr. Adeyemi. Mr. Adeyemi, can you unmute yourself? I'm worried when you raise your hand, you don't speak. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, you can send me a chat if you can unmute. Okay. I think he wants to make contribution, or maybe if you are speaking, I don't think maybe your mic is, we can't hear you. Okay. So you have your risk register, like she said. For every scope, for every requirement that you're bringing in, you want to understand what are the possible risks that could be associated to those requirements. So what do? When you identify it, you have to now start planning on how to mitigate so that if it was a negative risk, it does not affect your requirements. So it's good to have that register. For every project, what are those possible uncertain events that could or could not, may or may not occur? And if it occur, how can that affect the requirement that you've gathered? You need to understand that. Know your enterprise environmental factor and your organizational process assets. You have your expert judgment. Yeah. Subject matter consultation. The data analysis, you know what that means. Based on your scope, you guys might need to make decisions, different kinds of decisions, votes or anything, and your facilitation, because you are sorting. This is now everybody coming together. What do we, from all the things we acquired, how do we now sort? You might need to have a lot of discussions. You might need to have a lot of meetings. You might need to have a lot of conversations. Now, these things are the things that create innovations in a project. The way people think, they come in, they share ideas, how they are going to take decisions. You need to have all that. And you do your product analysis. Project management, project managers, what is product analysis? What is a product analysis? Yes, project managers.
I think
No.
is the details of the results I want to get, or the product,
Okay.
uh, defined defined details of the unique product after all the deliverables are brought in. So
Okay.
analyzing them, getting the data, knowing what they can do and what they cannot do.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Zach.
Yes, just to add to what Yetunde said, it's just a process of breaking down and getting you to study the product so as to determine what you should do and how it should perform.
Okay.
And the reasons for the analysis is to clearly understand the product requirements, to get you to understand the features and functions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, to also avoid misunderstanding with stakeholders.
All right. So as he has said, most of the times, reasons for it is for us to be able to understand why we analyze products is for us to be able to understand what the product does, how it's going to work, what does the customer need it for. Okay. It helps us to be able to define and sort scope when we have this better understanding. Okay. And you have your scope statements, your project scope statements, okay, as the output for this. you have your project documents updates. We'll look at what project scope statement is. We've already seen it, okay? A statement that describes a lot of things about the scope, okay? Your boundaries, your out of scope, and the rest of them, your assumption log, and your project documents, okay? Traceability, stakeholder register as an output of the defined scope. So let's look at them one after them. So this is product analysis. It says it can be used to define the product services or a product or services. It includes asking questions about the product or the service or forming an answer to describe the use, the characteristics, and other relevant aspects of what is going to be delivered. Product analysis is performed to analyze the objective and description of a product as stated by the customer or sponsor. The information is used to define tangible deliverables, okay? Products. So elements of a project charter and the scope statement. Remember, we have a project charter. Remember what the project charter is. This is what can be contained in a project charter. It has your project purpose, your overview, project objectives, your high-level requirements, high-level risk. Okay, you can do your milestone schedules, your stakeholder list, tailoring, success criteria, okay, and budgets. Anything you can just tailor, but most times usually one page, just a summary. The document that has in details is always your business case, which is basically for business justification. So you have your scope statement. This is what your scope statement should look like. You have your scope description, okay? Progressively elaborate. Project deliverables, acceptance criteria, and project exclusions. I saw this recently in an exam. When you're looking at project scope statements, it's not just what the scope covers, also what is excluded. We need to spell it out, right? This is what we are doing and this is what we are not doing in terms of acceptance and approval. And that's what we have. So the next one we have here is what we call the work breakdown structure. Create work breakdown structure. What is work breakdown structure? Create work breakdown structure. What is work breakdown structure?
Is a hierarchical decomposition of the work to be done.
Okay, so what do you think your primary inputs will be?
Is the scope statement.
Okay, thank you very much. It is the scope statement because you know it's most time what you see is that the output of the previous process will be your input for your new project because it's like they are linked. There is a lot of dependencies, interrelationship among all the processes. It's not as if one is just standing alone. So yes, again, we have to know because we have identified all the work that needs to be done in the project. We have defined it and we have a scope statement. So we now have to start decomposing that work, breaking down those work into smaller manageable components. And the process benefit is to provide a framework for the work to be delivered. So this is what you call the work breakdown structure. Okay, you have your project management plan. You have your scope management plan as an input. You know how we got them. You have your project document, could be your project scopes, not could be, mandatory. You have your scope statements. You have your requirement documentation. That you remember at the requirement documentation, you have separated each of the scope based on different needs. You have your stakeholder needs, requirements, you have your product requirements, project requirements, and all those things. So you now have your scope statement that aligns the things that would be covered, right? And you have to bring it in. You have your enterprise environmental factor, and you have your organizational process asset as your inputs. For that organization, how is scope work breakdown structure being created, right? How is it created? How is it done? Do you have a template? Do you have an asset? Do you have your, lessons learned, previous projects? You want to bring it in. You want to see it. If you don't have it, you know you have to create yours, right? You have your expert judgments. Yes, you need to come in with expert subject matter consultation, right? And Ene, you're writing on my screen, and you have your decomposition. We are going to decompose the task now. Okay, you have here your scope baseline. At your scope baseline, right, which is the output of your your work breakdown structure. And remember what we talked at as a baseline. We said the baseline was what? What did we call a baseline?
The reference point.
Okay.
An approved document that
an approved document. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to scope, this is what we have agreed as a team, right? As such, if you are going to add any change to that scope baseline, it must go through the change management procedure. And what are they? Number one, there are about 6 of them. What are they? Number one, impact assessments. As a project manager, when there's a new need for change, when the change request has been raised, you have to check the impact. For instance, it was a cost change. The change was in the budget. You have to see the impact, assess the impact that that cost will cause on the scope and also even on the timeline. If it was what? Scope, you need to assess the impact as a project manager. You need to come up with alternatives, with a solution. Because of your stakeholders, you need to understand what are their risk attitude. So there are some stakeholders that are very open. They are open to new changes, new suggestions. They want to take risk, right? So when you have a need for change and you check all these things, the impact, assess the impact, and you come up with solutions, you can openly go, right? Even without coming up with the solution, you can just go and say, oh, this is what we have. And the person is like, it's not shocked, it's okay, all right, we are open, okay, let's deal with it. But there are some stakeholders that we said they are risk averse. They don't want to take risk. As such, you don't even go to them without a solution. PMI best practice is that you assess your risk, understand the impact. Now do what? Come up with alternatives, solutions. Then go to the change management board. Not one person is in charge of change when we look at the predictive environment. Go to the change management board with the change based on their decision. If they accept, if they reject, or if in some cases they might even delay the change. You now do what? You now update the necessary documents and you inform your team. That is 5. The first one that I didn't add is raise a change request, and anybody can raise that change request. I hope we are not going to forget it because you see it in your exams. Please, I've been saying it, I think I've said it about 5 times now, and I know why I'm repeating it over and over. If you know how to manage change in the predictive environment, it will help you. In Agile, we work with autonomous, self-organized team. And when it has to do with the project, the organization will give the power. They empower the team to make certain decisions. In the traditional project management, you cannot just wake up and make decisions as a project manager. It has to go through the change control board. And these are the processes to get it done. And when you do it, you do what? You update those requirements. So this is what a create WBS means. For some of us, we're already familiar with it. This is a project you decompose, right? Hierarchical decomposition to manageable work tasks, right? So you have here your phases. This is the project. You break it down into phases. You can further break them down into deliverables, and you now break them down into more work packages. These are the smallest units of the scope. Now, let's do something as a team. Let's go to the whiteboard. Can you see my whiteboard?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is just an example, right? We're trying to build, let's say, sites. We are going to try to do what? To build a project. Maybe we want to build a house, 2-bedroom flat, right? And that's our project. 2-bedroom. Want to build a 2-bedroom. 2-bed. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. Disclaimer, in case any of this information don't come out right. We were trying to build a 2-bed. So we want to decompose this scope, this work, into what we call the work breakdown structure. So we are going to decompose this into the first phase is what we call phases, right? And what are the phases for this? Like we said, this is what do you call it? The substructure, which is usually your foundations, right? Foundation. Okay, right? This one is what? Superstructure. Let's use this. This is your substructure. Do you have any builder here? Any engineer in the house? Then we have superstructure. That's the building and the roof, right? This is underground foundation, superstructure, and this is what? Finishing. So let's decompose the substructure. So we can put this like this, right? Let's decompose it further. Substructure, what do you have? What do you do for foundation? Scope of work. What do you do first? You clear the land. Yeah? You clear the land, right?
Mm-hmm. You dig the foundation.
Okay, let's do this. I think that's still much. So let's say this one will be site preparation. Site preparation, and this one will be foundation work. Foundation, please, it's not easy to write with white pen, so forgive my writing. So this is it. So remember, at this phase, this becomes what? This is the project itself, project, right? And this becomes your phases. You broke down the project into 3 phases, the scope into 3 phases. All right, so this becomes your deliverables. So we have here what? Site, what's it called? Preparation and what? Foundation work. At the site preparation, let's break it down. What do we do? Guys, what should we do? Where are the men now? Help us now. You clear your sites, you clear your land, Abi? Clearing. Right? What else do you do?
Like a warehouse or a batcher or something.
Warehouse? Yeah, you just
To
clear the
they used
land.
to store, okay, but I thought they used
Yeah,
to make one structure.
you said the building. You said the building. Where are my guys now? You guys should come and help us out. I'll go to wedding planning now. We'll finish this one now. We'll go to wedding planning now, where we will fit talk well. Right? So you can just say you clear or you set out the building. Yeah. So at this one, what was this? This was what? This was
Foundation.
foundation work. So let's break down the foundation. What do? We dig.
We dig the foundation.
Right? Then what do we do again here? We do what?
You lay the
pour concrete and lay the pour the concrete. Right? This is scope of work. This is work. These are requirements. Then you can come here to superstructure. When you come to superstructure, what do you want to do first? Superstructure, you want to first of all do what? Right? Construct the wall, the building. This is the building. Construct the building. That's the body of the building, and this is the roofing. Right? At the roofing, what do you do? At the building, what do? You subdivide it again. Right? What do you do here? The building, what do? You lay the blocks. You start building and you start laying the block. Then you construct the, what's it called? So it's just like that. Please, let me go back. Let me leave here. The men, I was hoping the men will help us. Let's go to wedding planning since it's the women. Okay, so we are breaking down work breakdown structure for a woman, for a wedding. So wedding, what are the three phases in a wedding? The project is a wedding. What are the three phases? Wedding.
You consult with the bride. What does she want? Where is the venue?
Pre-planning.
What's the guest list like?
So there is the pre-planning, right? Wedding day. And after wedding.
Okay.
Right? After wedding. Okay. Pre-planning. What do you do? Let's say these are our phases. Okay. Right? These are our phases. 3 phases. We broke it. It can be more than 3 or work break decomposition. So you can start numbering this. So this is the project. And you can have here as project 1. Don't forget, if it's a projectized environment, you would have had more than 1 project. So at this point, it will be 1.1. No, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. Have you seen how we are numbering it? Okay. So pre-planning, what do you want to do here? You have to look for what?
Your vendors.
Vendors, right?
Guest list. Guest list.
Guest list. Okay. We didn't even put, okay, after party, that's the food section. Guest list and let's say bride's
outfits. Bride and groom's outfit.
Yeah, so you do that. Outfits. You see, we are decomposing it more, right? Now, these vendors, under vendors, you can further decompose vendors to what? Are we contracting it out? Outdoor?
Caterer.
Caterer.
Decorators.
So you see what we are doing? We are decomposing this tax. So at this point here, you have here 1.11. This will be 1.12. And this will be 1.13. You start decomposing it. So the whole idea of work breakdown structure is to be able to create and manage tax to the last level. Now, when we come in tomorrow, we are going to do sequencing. And this is going to be our foundation for sequencing. Okay, let's say after party, you're looking at the food. Let's decompose this. You're looking at the food. Okay. You're looking at the food. So what do we do here? Okay. You said this could be what? Let me say food, right? After party, food, drinks, and entertainment. Let's decompose the drink. Right? What kind of drink? alcohol, non-alcohol, and what? Local. What? Non-alcohol or what? Yeah. So in this non-alcohol, you might still want to decompose it. What kind of non-alcohol are we looking at? Are you talking about wines? Are you talking about
Mocktails,
minerals?
fresh fruits, and all that.
Okay, or
Fresh
fruits.
juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see, you keep just decomposing it. So when we come in tomorrow, so don't forget I said this our thesis and this our deliverables. This level is our deliverables, and you can have work packages at the end of each. So when we come in for sequencing, you need your work breakdown structure is your foundation to every project deliverables. It starts from your scope. You need to know the things that is covered, your scope baseline, the things that are covered and the things that are not covered. So at this point, let's say we're talking about food, right? How do we create it? We now start talking about the activities to create the food. So at this point, we are stopping at just work packages. When we come in tomorrow, we'll look at for us to be able to bring in drinks, what activities do we need to do? Who are our vendors? Are they supplying it to us? Are we going to pick it up? If we are going to pick it up, how many hours will it take for us to bring it in? If they are going to deliver it, how long will it take them to bring it in? So you now start looking at those activities that is necessary, that is needed for you to complete each work package. Now, just a quick, I just want to show you through what we did. I did here what's it called? This is our project, right? And this is our epic. This is like our high level, right, for our project. You see, I didn't do it like work breakdown structure. I used my Google Sheets document to do it, okay? So you have your high level, and each of these high level I was able to break down. Look at users, registration, and authentication. That's sprint 1. See how I broke it down, right? This is how I broke it down. This is how I broke it down. Did you see my numbering, how I numbered it? 1.1, 1.2, this is epic 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and 1.8. So this is my sprint 2. See, I numbered my sprint 2, 2.1, 2.2, 2.21. Have you seen? Because it's a component of this deliverable. It's a work package under this deliverable. So I had to put it 2.21. So this is how you number it. It does not mean that you must write or draw your normal work breakdown structure. In any way you want to present on how you intend to decompose your work, you can go ahead and decompose them. So this is another format. PMI does not have a particular way of saying, oh, this is the format that every project must follow. Depending on who you work for, your project, what are their assets, the organizational process assets, you'll be able to know what is the best format, template that you want to use to present your work. Okay, so that is what we have in the work breakdown structure. So again, just what we've said, it is essential to the success of a project. If it is not in the work breakdown structure, do not do it. It is not part of your project. If you must do it, it must go through the formal change management approval method, okay? And this becomes your basis for your project. Your scope this becomes the basis for your baseline, scope baseline. And from that scope baseline, you should be able to know how to be able to draft or put your schedule, your cost, and manage every other component of the project. So the work breakdown structure defines responsibilities of the team. The communication tool, it is created by the PM, subject matter expert. The project team is a great tool for the team building. So yes, as a project manager, you can create the project, the work breakdown structure, but I always advise do it in consultation with your project team. I'm not sharing my screen. You guys are not seeing me and nobody said something.
Yeah, sorry, we weren't seeing your screen too.
I hope you are all following. Okay, please. So that's what we have. We have here, yeah, it's the basis for, it is based on project deliverables, not tasks needed to create those things. So at the work breakdown structure, please note, you only want to create the project deliverables, the scope, the requirement that has been agreed upon. You are not looking at putting the activities to create that project. And that's why the work breakdown structure stops at work package. See where it stops. It stops at work package. There's another thing that we'll have tomorrow, which we will be doing, is to add activity list to each of this work package. For work package 3.22, what are we going to do? You start listing those activities. You start listing, that's what we call the bottom-up estimation for scheduling, right? So we need to do that. And it says here that a deliverable-oriented rank decomposition of work to be executed by the project team. It is used to accomplish the project objectives and create the required deliverables, with each descending level representing an increasing level of detail of the project. Each node must be unique, must have a unique number. Please note, whether you are putting it in a structural form like we just displayed, or you want to do it as a form, that unique ID is very, very important, so that you'll be able to trace, to help you to locate and arrange each node. There cannot be any gap or any overlap of work package. Okay, nothing is eliminated and nothing is duplicated. So that's what it means, to be able to track each of those work to the number. And components of a work breakdown structure. So you have components of a baseline. You have your work, number one, you have your work baseline, your work breakdown structure. Scope baseline. Remember, we talked about scope baseline. Scope baseline has three components. One is the work breakdown structure. The second one is your WBS, right? The WBS, right? Dictionary, the WBS dictionary, which basically just describes what to be done. For each of, like for instance, it just gives a more detailed description of your work package, right? For instance, we talked about juice. So you can go to your work breakdown structure and say, oh, this juice we are talking about, it shouldn't be made with herbs. It should be only fruit juice, you know, just basically just describing the work breakdown structure. So for work breakdown structure, don't forget we said it must have your, yeah, so this is an example. This is another format of creating that work breakdown structure. So you have here another format of the work breakdown structure, and this becomes what? A foundation in any project. Without a work breakdown structure, you're not managing anything. So that work breakdown structure that gives you your scope baseline, gives you your work breakdown structure, and gives you your work breakdown structure dictionary. So you have your scope baseline, you have your project scope statement, sorry, your work breakdown and your work breakdown structure. Under your scope baseline, these three things are the compulsory components. Your scope baseline must contain your scope project scope, your scope statement, your work breakdown structure, and your work breakdown structure document. And in some cases, you have your project document updates. If there was any update, maybe at the point that you were creating your work breakdown structure, there was new needs. You need to make sure you follow the change management control procedure, and you do what? You update. Very important. Update and communicate that update to your project team. So project managers, let's look at this.
So I have a question, right? Within this work breakdown, where does budget come in?
We'll
right?
do that.
Where does
yeah, is budget comes in with this foundation, but we'll do it when we get to cost management. You see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have all these work breakdowns, you have it without, is it after the work breakdown that you now start costing
after
the
work
project
breakdown structure, right? You
Right,
now
yeah.
create what we call your schedule from your work breakdown
Right.
structure. So that schedule is about your project, your activities, right? your activities that you need to create the work breakdown structure. We'll do schedule management, so you see that. And based on each of those activities, you now start looking at the cost that it will take you to create each of those activities. So you now aggregate those costs. You sum those costs up. That's a way of determining your budget. One way of determining your budget is through what we call bottom-up estimation, and you need your work breakdown structure to be able to aggregate. We'll do that in cost management. We have other ways to look at cost. Either you look the bottom-up estimation, or you can do what we call analogous estimation or parametric estimation for your project budget. But the most reliable is the bottom-up estimation, and that you need the foundation. Your work breakdown structure becomes your foundation for you to determine your cost, becomes your foundation for you to know the activities that you need for that project. Without the work breakdown structure, you are just assuming. It's not reliable. Your assumption might not be reliable. Okay. The project I told you I'm going in, I just recently got 6-month project, very good project. So during the briefing, they told me the project was going to be for 6 months. The projection for the project is a 6-month contract. And I told them, how did they come about with that 6 months? They laughed. Do you understand? Because I know it might not be possible, but again, we're using Agile and Scrum, so we are not bound to time. What we are bound to is early value. So if we have something that we can run to the market with, and at the end of the 6 months, we would have delivered the highest value to the customer, for us is more impactful and more successful than running with timelines. Okay, so all this we are doing is around the predictive traditional waterfall method. In Agile, it's managed differently. Okay. Yeah. So I hope I answered your question. You see it, we do it.
Yes, you did.
We do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So let's try.
Validation by stakeholders.
Sir?
Validation, scope validation.
Okay.
Or get stakeholder validation.
Okay. On the part of who? Put it well. Put it well for others to also benefit or understand.
Okay, let me try again.
Stakeholder.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. What I see here is that this happened because the deliverables of the earlier phases were not formally accepted by the sponsor before moving to the next phase. Okay. So what should have happened was to perform scope validation.
Okay.
And obtain formal acceptance of the deliverables at the end of each phase.
Okay. So at what point do we verify scope? Okay, what is the difference between verify scope and validate scope? And at what point do we verify scope and validate scope? Okay, first of all, question, what is the difference between verify scope and validate scope? Let's do that first.
Validate is obtaining approval.
Okay. Verify.
Verify scope means checking whether the deliverables meet the documented requirements.
Okay.
Probably quality standards.
Yeah, most times it's always the quality standard. Now, what do you think should come first? Verify scope, which is sometimes I call it quality control, right? Verify scope and validate scope. Which should come first?
I think verify should come.
So you need to verify scope before you validate
Before
scope.
validate.
So at what point then do you now verify your scope? At what point do you now verify your scope?
Just before.
I would say at the planning phase, right? When you're still trying to sort out the scope and you're engaging the stakeholders.
Okay.
So all that happens at the planning phase. Yeah.
What about execution? Quality control. What about execution? So you mean that when you verify at the beginning and the project is being implemented, during execution, you don't want to go and control quality?
No, I think quality control is ongoing, right? You do it as you progress at every stage. You make sure it meets the required specifications. Yep.
Thank you very much. It's not just only on the outcome that you verify. When you talk about quality, it has to be iterative. And everything that has to do with the product, garbage in, garbage out. When it comes to the processes, please, you have to continuously audit, look at the processes, make sure that they are building according to the accepted criteria, according to the customer's expectations, right? They are creating, don't wait until they are finished creating for you to see that they are working, aligning to the need of the project. So when you do that, at the end of the day, you make sure you validate that scope. Present through maybe presentations, experimentations, inspections, and that's what we do in the Agile. We call it review. We review it for the stakeholders to come in and give us their formal approval, whether they need it or whether it has made the need, or if they want any kind of adjustment or any kind of feedback, we're able to adjust to those. That's what adaptability means. We'll see more in Agile, okay? So validate scope is the process of formalizing acceptance of the completed deliverables. The key benefit of this process is that it brings objectivity to the acceptance process and increase probability of final product service or result acceptance by validating each deliverable. Every deliverable has to be validated. Every phase has to be validated. And that's what we have. So at this point, we want to come in. For us to validate, we need to come in with our plans, scope management plan, because we might still have information. The requirement plan, this scope plan and requirement plan would have documented on the method that we are going to use in validating. So we don't just wake up and say, oh, we are validating. How are we going to do the validation? Are we doing demonstration? Are we doing reviews? Are we doing inspection? Are we doing experimentation? To the stakeholder. So they have to come in at that point, and we need to know what was the agreed guideline on how we should as a team validate. That's why you have the scope and the requirement plan and any other scope baseline. For the scope baseline, what are we validating? What were the approved reference points? What were the approved scope for the project? So we want to go in and see what we have done, if it is meets with the need of the scope baseline, okay? And you have your project document. It could be your quality report. We are validating, very, very important. Your quality report will come in, okay? Quality plan, in some cases, you could bring your quality plan here. You have your requirement documentation and your traceability metrics. In some cases, you have your verified deliverables, because you cannot validate deliverables that have not been verified. You must have your verified deliverables for you to be able to validate. okay, and your work performance information or data. At this point, work performance data, like we said, are usually your plans at the point of execution. What are the things that you plan to do, right? What are those things that we plan? What were they, not the actual, right? What were the plan? Are we working according to those plan data, right? You want to come in and again to validate, like I said, you could do your inspection. Inspection is just, you know, being able to see through what has been done, comparing it to the acceptance criteria, if it has matched or if there's any adjustment that needs to be done. Sometimes you could do experimentation. Sometimes you could just do your normal review and everything, and you have your decision making. Of course, at that point, from the stakeholder, from the team, where we are, the deliverables, this is the verified, how do we do it? Is it good enough? Should we move on to the next? Should we close the phase? Do we need to adjust? Are there bugs? Are there errors? You know, you want to find all those things, and you now have your accepted deliverables. You see, input, verified deliverables. Verified deliverables that has not been validated can never be accepted. Okay, so you must inspect or validate your verified deliverables to have your output as your accepted deliverables. Your work performance information. At this point, you have now validated your plan versus your actual. Is it, if all things goes equal in the project, your plan should be equal to your actual. But in most cases, things don't go according to plan. There are changes. There are a lot of things that can happen even to our plan. So at that point, you want to analyze and come up with your work performance information. In some cases, are we above budget? Are we below budget? Are we behind schedule? Are we ahead of schedule, right? Do we need adjustments? Do we need to do some, you know, do we need recommendations to adjust or feedbacks from the stakeholders? And that's where your work performance information comes in. And if there's any need for change, please do your normal, we call it formal change control procedures. What are they? Let's mention, if there's a change request, that's number one. What's the next thing?
Impact assessment.
Yes, thank you. Second.
You look for alternatives.
Thank you. Third.
The management board, you go to the management board.
Yes,
with the change.
With the alternatives.
With
right?
the alternatives.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one.
When do you create the change? You update.
Yes, update, very important.
The documents.
Not necessarily when they create the change or if they accept the change. Even if they don't accept it, right? Mm-hmm. Make the necessary updates and finally communicate. Thank you very much. So if you see a question that tells you that change request has already been raised, you know the next thing is to do impact assessment. If you see a question that tells you that impact assessment has already been made, the scenario would be that they've made impact assessment. The next thing you do is to come up with alternatives, right? If you see a question that alternatives has been brought up, the change management board has made decision, you know the next thing you'd want to do is to update. So you see questions like, what is the first thing to do? What is the last thing to do? And what is the best thing to do? Okay? But if you have those processes on your fingertips, you know where the scenario is. You now know the next thing to do. You know if that's the first thing to do, and you know if that's the best thing to do. Most times when they ask you for the first thing, don't look for the solution. Asking you for the first thing, the first thing you want to do is to understand the problem. Understand it, identify it before you start looking for solution. Sometimes they will put the multi questions will be so tempting that you think, everything is the same thing. So please make sure that you know how to identify and how to stop. So you have your validate scope here. What do you do at the validate scope, right? The last part is the validate scope. And we've talked about it, it's about the stakeholders approving the verified deliverables. And yeah, if it's okay, if it's not okay. So you complete the deliverables, you know, this is just the map of what we just talked about. So let's look at this.
Rejected.
Okay. Should it be accepted or rejected? No story. They have to just reject it because it has not passed through. You can't, as a project manager, you don't even have the power to accept any, you don't have the power to accept any deliverables on behalf of your stakeholders. Yeah. So on behalf of this change management board, so you have your control scope, which is a process of monitoring the status of the project and the product scope. Okay, at the point we are just controlling scope, right? Process of monitoring the status of the project and the product scope and managing the changes to the scope baseline. The key benefits of this is that the scope baseline is maintained throughout the project. Anything can happen. So it does not mean that when we say we are doing this, we know we are process-centric. The whole idea of planning, conform is because we want to, sit down and make sure that we have captured any event that could occur, maybe risk and everything. But again, we cannot really have control over those things. Changes are inevitable. It may come, but it's reduced because we have known most of the things we want to do. It's not as high as changes in the adaptive environments, that's the agile environment, because it's not really being planned for. So it means that we have to constantly control the work, monitor the status, and know when to adjust. We control scope to avoid two things, which is the scope creep and the gold plating. We've talked about what both of them are. Again, our IT tool for us to be able to control scope, we have here our plans. You see, different kind of plan. Change, controlling. We have your scope baseline, performance management measurements. You're measuring your actual versus your plan versus your actual. Your plan versus your end versus your actual cost, okay? You want to plan that. You want to also, what's your change management plan, which is what we have. So almost the same thing with configuration management, your scope baseline, and you have your project documents, which is your lessons learned. You could have your requirement documents, traceability metrics, your work performance data. At this point is plan. When you now go through it, you have your variance analysis or your trend analysis. We've talked about what variance analysis is. Project managers, what is a trend analysis? What is trend analysis?
Change over time.
Sir?
Change over time.
Thank you very much. Do anybody has any other definition to this? Contribution? So you want to basically just observe your pattern, your data performance, and try to understand where you have, changes in that pattern, right? And that's what trend management is. In order for you to use decisions to predict for the future adjustments. Okay, you can use that for that data or that predictions for your future impacts or your future outcome on the project. So that's what we have in trend analysis. Whereas the variance analysis is when you're trying to find out the difference between what you plan and what you got. Okay, the gap, what is the difference? You want to find that out, okay? And now you have your work performance output. Sorry, your scope control, your output is your work performance data. Information transformed, you have your data. At the execution stage, what you have for work performance data. When you see me repeat things like this, it means that you're going to see it in your exams. Work performance data is basically talking about your plan. By the time you look at your variance, you get your actuals. You're able to interpret that into information, okay? And you present that information to your stakeholders. That is when it's useful to them, okay? And the need for changes will come up. For instance, you plan to spend $2,000 on this project, right? During your variance analysis, you found out that the project is not halfway, and you spent over 50% of the budget. And at that point, you will need what? To adjust, okay? You might need to bring in additional money, estimate at completion. You need a budget that is different from the original budget. And as such, you need to apply. In some cases, you might ask to take that budget from your reserve analysis or your reserve budget or your contingency budget, you understand? So reserve is where you have known, you had already set out amount of money for the things that you know could happen. So you can take those budgets from there. In some cases, you might have not known, but there would have been a budget around and you need to make those changes. So when there are needs for those changes, you need to make sure you follow your formal change management procedure. And when you do that, you update all the necessary documents. That's why most outputs you are going to be saying update, 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 okay? Update to all the affected documents, right? Okay, so you have that. So let's answer this question. Any question before we go in? Any question? Any question? Okay. In the absence of none, I think we should try this.
ACEF.
AC.
EF.
Do we agree with him? Do we agree with him? Okay, I agree with him. Oh. So let's move on. Should we move on? Guys, I need everybody back.
ACEF.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, choose two.
Yeah.
Scope the scope description and I think acceptance criteria.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
C.
Thank you. Do we agree with him?
D. The answer is D. The
Okay.
product backlog is a living artifact. So even in waterfall, I think it is progressively elaborate, if I'm correct. Though.
What do you understand by progressively elaborate?
It's more like as the project goes further, there will be updates.
So
like all these document updates.
why do we have a scope baseline? Yeah, they are rigid though. When it comes to the predictive is very rigid when it comes to their scope. They are not as flexible as the adaptive. Right?
I understand, but yes, but I was thinking that
adjustment can be made, but you see the whole essence of that change, you see that change management board that we have to just describe, and it's very simple. It can be very tedious. You can imagine that you needed to do an urgent change and you are waiting for approval, and most of the board members are not on ground to take there. Sometimes something that would have taken you 1 week, it is taking you 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It can be very, very tedious.
Wow.
Let's look at government. Let's look at a project for a government, heavily a regulated business environment. Okay, that maybe one minister did not come to, was not on seat for God knows how long. You go around for that change. So this is rigid, and that's why they do predictive plan. They want to sit down and really do a thorough plan. Some project, they can take 1 year to plan a project. It can take 6 months to just plan, only plan, because once those approvals has been done, it's rigid. But here it says, as a project team decomposes a work into the work breakdown structure, they begin to populate the product backlog. When must the team have the product backlog finished? We'll see this in Agile. The product backlog is never closed when we get to Agile. You see that scope? We don't have anything like baseline. That product backlog, that scope baseline is open from the beginning of the project to the owner, to the end. And that's why we say it is a living document. It's a living artifact. It evolves. As the project is evolving, the artifact is open. So we can bring in 1,000 change as we want. Millions, any change you want. But don't forget that we also have a process of agility is the ability to balance flexibility and stability. So we still have a way of balancing it out. So we make our sprint backlogs rigid, but the product backlog, we make it open and we refine it all the time. That's what you see things like product refinement, reprioritization. So we refine it, we evolve it. So we keep looking at the things that are applicable, the ones that are not. The product owner alone has a single power to just take out some things and bring in some things and refine it. You understand? To meet the need of the customer, because it's also representing the stakeholder, the customer. But in the traditional project management, the scope is rigid, and that's why they have a baseline. And once you want to put any changes to that baseline, you must follow through the formal change management procedure, and it's not beans. So they are rigid to changes. And because of that, that is why they are not open. So when there is innovations, when there are opportunities for creativity, innovations, they are not open to it. When there's an opportunity for improvement, they are not open to it. They see change as they are rigid about it. They still do it, but it's manageable. Like they have to find a way, and it's not easy. Unlike Agile, that's why Agile is very innovative. That's why there's a lot of adaptability, improvements in Agile, because they make change. The open backlog, the open scope that doesn't have a baseline makes it as an opportunity for us to see changes as opportunity for improvement. So once there is any change, let's look at the advantages that could come up from that change. Yeah, we maximize on those opportunities. Okay, that change is coming in with a lot of negativity. What do? We try to minimize that. We are open to change. And that's why most organizations are moving from the traditional predictive method, because it's not serving today's business. You might do everything. You have everything up. You have control. You have planned your organization. You plan your project. Are you in control of the need of your customers' need change or needs for changes? You are not in control of the market. You are not in control of those. Anything can happen. Your users can just wake up one day and move on. Look at what happened to Nokia, right? So because of that, organizations should learn to stay flexible, not because you don't have your processes well, but because you are not in control of changes in the marketplaces and the users' need. So as such, you should be flexible for any change that comes along. I hope you understand better. Okay.
Please, what are we referring to as, I don't know if I missed this part. What are we referring to as the product backlog?
Okay,
I know
okay,
work breakdown structures.
Yeah, that's agile work breakdown structure, product backlog. It's still a scope list, requirement list of things to be done in a project. But we don't call it work breakdown structure, we call it backlog, product backlog item. Okay?
Okay.
That's an agile term. We'll do it in agile.
Okay.
You see it as a topic.
Okay.
All right, so let's try.
This one is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop the project too.
Okay.
No, you can't stop the project too.
And
I
I'll
don't
create
know,
a
but I
work
don't think
breakdown program.
Huh?
no, I don't think you can stop the project already moving. That's what I'm saying. It's very complicated.
Okay, let's start with the person
Because
that says she can stop the project. Tell us why you want to stop the project.
Yeah, because I need the work breakdown structure to be able to know my limits, everything, that we've planned.
Okay.
Without the work breakdown structure, there's a tendency for creeping,
Okay.
right? So I think I might hold the project
Okay.
and we agree on what the work breakdown structure should be, and then we now continue. And that's my own thinking.
All right, thank you very much.
okay,
The other person.
let me come in. Number one, there is a timeline. It's an ongoing project.
Okay.
And from what we see, it's waterfall, and they are already executing it.
Okay.
I don't think as a project manager, you can just unilaterally determine or say you want to stop a project.
Okay.
So that's me too. I was thinking of stopping, but you can't just say you want to stop a project.
So
That's
what is your answer?
I'll go for D.
It's between A and D, but I'll pick A. I will allow the sponsor.
Huh?
Best
practice.
Then we can multitask.
Best practice.
We can
Let's
multitask.
talk about best practice. You can allow the sponsor that is not risk seeking. Do you know what that means? So please, yeah, ordinarily there are many ways you can do this. Use your project experience, tactical knowledge, explicit knowledge, use everything. But best practice, you need a work breakdown structure. Like Nkechi said, without the work breakdown structure, what are you doing? What is your scope? What's your baseline? What is out of scope? So is it not better to just pause the project, stop the project work, and get it ready so that you know what you are managing? Please, best practice, you stop the project, okay? Outside PMI, do anything you want to do, all right? But when you are answering PMI question, you must abide with their best practice, okay? A lot of people, we see a lot of, on LinkedIn especially, people argue, you should not be doing this. I've been managing projects for 20 years. You cannot stop a project work. Why should, that is why they fail the PMP exams. When you are writing the PMP exams, please pretend that you don't have any experience. Just focus on their best practice. All right? Yeah. Let's do this. Dr. Alex said C.
C. Yeah, I think it's C.
Okay. So you see, you are going to be seeing a lot of questions like this. And this is not taking you from the beginning. Please note how these questions are, right? It said the change control board has decided to reject the change. At that point, what comes next? If you know your 6 procedures, you know what it's updates, right? So you go ahead and document the outcome for the change request and communicate last. If they ask what's the last thing to do, there would have been option for communication. Okay, yeah.
I'll say A.
Okay, and A is correct. It's very simple. Scope plan contains everything. Scope statement contains everything, right? Some people call it scope statement of work, right? It contains everything. Your scope and your out of scope, in what is included and not included, and objectives and everything, description and everything. All right, you're correct.
A.
All right. I hope we all agree. Doctor, yeah, which one are you choosing? C, A, which one are you choosing? Which of them? F. Okay, you said F. I hope it's for this answer, F. That's F is A, C, and D. The approved project scope statements, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure dictionary. Yes, that is correct. And there, guys, we've come to the end of the class. When we come in tomorrow, we're going to look at schedule project management. If you have your Scrum guide, please read it on your 6th edition. Okay. Yeah. Any question? Question, guys? Mr. Isaac, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Medu. You just said something about, okay, when you say scope document, I know some people call it scope document, some people call it scope of work. They will shorten it to SOW. Okay, it means the same thing, right?
Yeah, we have, when it comes to scope of work, we have about two. We have procurement scope of work. We have the real project statement scope of work. Do you understand? So depending on,
Okay.
I think it means the same thing, depending on the organization and how
Okay.
they
They'll say, okay, scope of
so
work has been approved.
yeah, it just
Scope
documents
document has
everything.
been approved.
Yeah, like this scope of work that we are talking about here under scope, right? The scope of work, right? Or the scope of how do you call it? What's the name again? It does not necessarily mean the procurement part of it. Do you understand? So this one has, you can call this scope of work as well, and you can also call the other one the procurement scope of work, depending on the organization and how it's being scored. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other question?
Thank you.
Any other question? Feedbacks, guys. Let's do our feedbacks. Who is giving us feedbacks for today?
I'll say it's been very enlightening and really thank you very much. I unfortunately have not even had time to open any of the books. I was hoping to do so. But it's been very enlightening and relatable. I'm happy that you're pointing out the best practices. So, it's like you're relearning and unlearning certain things. So it's good. It's good for me. Maybe I need to do some more work to at least go back and read. Now, when you talk about edition 6 and edition 7, so I don't know, we should focus on one or we should read both.
Do all, because do all. When you want to understand, like now, when you get to this schedule management that we are doing, and in the 7th edition, right, they had cut out a lot of industry practice.
Okay.
You understand? Like,
yeah,
comes to critical path method, sequencing, dependencies. They are not really deep on it. Do you understand? Like I said,
Right.
this is not just for your exams. This is also to prepare you for the
Industry
best
practice.
practice worldwide. And when
Right.
it comes to schedule management, some people make a career just because they are called schedulers or planners. There are people that they even earn more than project managers. So those schedulers, they use tools like Primavera or MS Project and the rest. So they just help to, it's very light. They just help to, you know, plan the organizational resources, the schedules, the resources, and the costs. They monitor the projects, right? And they give feedback, they give the report. So you are not into managing the activities of the whole project. So because I know it can be a standalone exercise.
Right.
In my early days in project management, I went into for a class. There's this class that somebody was teaching critical path method, how to understand how early you can start an activity, how late you can stop an activity, and all those kind of things, how to sequence those activities. And he was charging 2,000 naira to teach. It was just a webinar, 1 hour webinar, 2 hours webinar. He charged 2,000 naira. In the comment section, I saw, so he said if you're interested, he will send you the payment link. I saw over 800 people saying I'm interested. Let's say only 200 of them paid that 200 this thing.
2,000 naira.
2,000 naira. That's how much? That's about 400,000 in one webinar. Do you understand? The beautiful thing about project management is that there are many ways you can make money from it. So many ways. And I've said that I went for a project that I went for an interview that was, it was a tech company. I went through their website. I was very happy because I'm very familiar and I'm more comfortable with Agile. I don't really like the predictive, right? And so during the interview, I was very happy. And when I got there, nobody asked me anything. When you're talking about enterprise projects, where project has grown from just your basic 6, you have lots of people, you're looking at lots of, it's almost impossible to be able to manage that project qualitatively. You must manage it quantitatively, and you must be able to manage large information. And it's not something you can just sit down and say, oh, this one does this one does that. You need a system. You need a tool, most times software, to be able to manage those things. And you must understand how it works with pen and paper for you to be able to manage the enterprise project. You see some people, they're looking for scale agile managers or agile professionals or scale scrum masters, enterprise projects. They're looking at portfolio level, programs level. You cannot manage it based on your thinking or your feelings. It has to be with real details. And how do you get that done? Through tools. So you must understand how to manage the little ones so that you can translate that to enterprise project. As such, the 6th edition exposes you to the fundamental when it comes to managing all these process knowledge areas. There are something, I don't joke with that 6th edition. We're in 8th edition now, but I still go back to 6th edition. So for this year exams, this exams is centered on the 7th edition. I'm going to send you the exams content outline for 7th edition. So you see it, how it's being managed. This is under process. This is process domain. What we just did today is process domain. So you see some questions that will come up in how they expect you to think when it comes to scope management, right? Process management. So scope process management, how do you manage it? In case things, then when you are reading, yeah, we've told you what to do, plan A, process A, B, C, D, D, to the end. What if it doesn't happen that way? The scenario questions will point out what shouldn't happen. They won't point out directly what should happen. So when you are reading and when you are thinking as a PMI, a PMP project manager, when you're thinking, you have to make sure you understand if things don't go according to plan, how do you adjust? How do you manage? How do you solve? Most times, project managers are just helping people solve business-related, project-related problems and giving them the rights, getting them to get the right decisions. Not necessarily teach, maybe doing it by themselves, but you can influence your team to make right decisions. Like that scenario that we checked, and some people were saying, oh, you do this, you that, the work breakdown structure. There's how you can get your team to pause that project, to stop that project. By the time you give them reasons, inspire them with the outcome. If we don't do this, this is what we'll do. They'll get to believe, they'll get to align, they get to commit, and they'll get to focus on what they've committed. And you get your result as a project manager. Ability to influence your team to take the right decision, right? To think, to innovate together is very, very important. And most of this foundation is in 6th edition. So I don't joke with the 6th edition, right? As we are, you see what is happening. The 8th edition, I told you, they've brought back some of the processes of the 6th edition. Because you see, when there are no standards, people don't follow. You can't just say project management, and I know everybody is going agile, and you forget about the real foundation of projects. They are bringing back some of the practices in the 6th edition, in this 8th edition, because there was no standardization of the practice. People were just doing what they like, and it's not really good for them as a body. So they had to bring back some practices. Like this IT tools, input tools and output. It was not examinable. It is not examinable in the 7th edition. But you see, 8th edition, they are bringing it back. In the 6th edition, it was examinable. So that's why I'm pushing everyone to write their exams before then, because you might need to cram it. Okay? Again, if you know and understand your knowledge area, you don't need to cram. You want to create a project charter, you know what you need to create a project charter. You know what is the output. You want to manage scope, you know what you need to manage scope. You know what should be your expected. So when you understand it very well and relate it to what you do every day, it will be easy for you to be able to answer their questions. Okay, but if you see it like one science like that, we need to follow. It might be difficult. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Still pushing for practice. I've shared the practice questions. Practice, 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 practice. Okay, so we'll see again tomorrow. If you can, but if you cannot, just prepare to come to class. We'll still see how we can break it down for everyone to pick up. Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye, everyone. Thank you.